divorced, humiliated, and forgotten, the man who returned was untouchable. The wine sparkled beneath the chandelier as laughter filled the room, not joy, but cruelty dressed as celebration. Christmas lights glowed while her family leaned in, waiting. Samantha raised her glass, smiling like a blade. "I'm divorcing this pathetic loser," she announced. They cheered. They clapped. They toasted his humiliation. Nathan didn't argue. He didn't beg. He stood, buttoned his coat, and walked into the falling snow without looking back. They thought they had erased him. They didn't know they had just applauded. The rise of a man who would return untouchable. Snow drifted lazily from the black sky, soft and innocent, the kind that made streets look clean even when they were not. Nathan walked without hurry, his shoes crunching against the pavement as if the world itself wanted to announce. Every step he took away from the house. Behind him, the glow of the Christmas lights still spilled through the tall windows, warm and golden, mocking the cold that wrapped around his body. Laughter burst again inside, loud and careless. And then the door closed fully, sealing him out. He stopped at the edge of the driveway, breath rising in slow white clouds, and looked down at his hands. They were steady. That surprised him. He had expected shaking, rage, maybe tears. Instead, there was nothing sharp, nothing loud. Just a deep, heavy quiet spreading through his chest, like the calm that comes after something has already died. Minutes earlier, he had been sitting at the long dining table, the one he paid to have. Restored when Samantha said her parents deserved something classy for Christmas. He remembered adjusting his chair so her mother could sit comfortably. Remembered pouring wine for her father. Remembered smiling politely as her brother complained about his job and hinted for help. Nathan never bragged about giving. He remembered believing that effort mattered, that loyalty was noticed even when it wasn't praised. Samantha had stood then, crystal glass raised, eyes glittering not with nerves but with satisfaction. She had rehearsed it. He saw that now. The pause before she spoke, the way her smile didn't reach her eyes, the quick glance at her family to make sure they were ready to clap. "I'm glad to inform you," she had said, voice smooth and cold, "that I and this pathetic loser are getting divorced." The word loser still echoed, not as pain but as a label she had been waiting to stick on him in front of an audience. Nathan remembered the cheers more clearly than her voice, the sound of approval, the way betrayal had turned festive. Her father lifting his glass as if welcoming freedom. Her mother's smile tight with relief. Her siblings laughing as though Nathan were a joke finally told correctly. He remembered looking at Samantha then, really looking at her, and realizing she was relieved he did not interrupt her performance. So he hadn't. Now, standing alone beneath the falling snow, Nathan let the silence finish what the laughter had started. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. No messages. No apologies. No hesitation. Samantha had already decided he was a chapter she was done reading. He didn't call a taxi. He didn't know why. Maybe he needed the walk. Maybe he needed the cold to remind him that he still existed. As he moved down the street, memories followed him, unwelcome but insistent. The small apartment they first shared when neither of them had much. The nights he stayed up calculating numbers while she slept. The way he took on extra consulting work without telling her because he didn't want her to feel the pressure he felt every day. He remembered promising her stability, a future that wouldn't embarrass her in front of people like her family. Somewhere along the way, stability had become invisibility. He passed a closed bookstore, its dark windows reflecting his shape back at him. A tall man, shoulders straight, face calm, eyes unreadable. He barely recognized himself. He looked like someone who knew exactly where he was going, even though he had no destination. His phone buzzed suddenly. For half a second, a foolish part of him wondered if it was her. It wasn't. A message from an unknown number. "You walked away exactly like I hoped you would." Nathan stopped again, snow gathering on his coat. His thumb hovered over the screen, then lowered. He typed nothing. He didn't need to ask who it was from. The tone was unmistakable. Samantha never missed a chance to feel victorious. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and continued walking. At the corner, a black sedan waited. Engine humming softly, headlights cutting through the snow. Nathan slowed. The car door opened before he reached it. "Mr. Hale," a voice said calmly, respectful, not curious. "It's been a long time." Nathan exhaled slowly, the sound barely audible beneath the wind. He stepped closer, peering into the warm interior. Inside sat a man in his late 50s, impeccably dressed, eyes sharp and measuring, the kind of man who did not waste words. "I told you not to contact me unless it was necessary," Nathan said quietly. The man nodded once. "Tonight qualifies." Nathan looked back down the street toward the distant glow of the house, now barely visible through the snowfall. The laughter was gone, replaced by silence he no longer belonged to. "Get in," the man added. "Everything is ready. They've finalized the paperwork. You no longer have any legal ties holding you back." Nathan opened the door and stepped into the warmth, the cold releasing him reluctantly. As the door closed, shutting out the snow and the past, his reflection stared back at him in the darkened window. For the first time that night, his lips curved into the faintest smile, not of revenge, not of pride, but of certainty. Nathan did, loosening his coat, placing it neatly over the chair beside him. He scanned the documents without hurry. Trusts, holdings, shell companies, names that meant nothing to anyone who didn't know where to look. He recognized them all. "You kept it cleaner than I expected," Nathan said. "That was the point," the man replied. "Invisible is safer than impressive." Nathan signed where indicated, his handwriting steady, precise. With each signature, another invisible thread tying him to his old life quietly snapped. No shared assets, no entanglements, no leverage left behind. When he finished, he set the pen down and leaned back. "She thinks I have nothing," Nathan said calmly. The man's eyes sharpened. "And you let her?" Nathan nodded once. She needed to believe it. They all did. The man studied him for a long moment. "You built something extraordinary while pretending to be ordinary. Do you ever regret hiding it from her?" Nathan looked toward the window again. Snow continued to fall, indifferent and patient. "I didn't hide it from her," he said. "I protected it from who she became." Silence settled between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. A soft chime sounded from a tablet on the desk. The man glanced at it, then turned the screen toward Nathan. On it were live market figures, graphs moving subtly, numbers shifting in quiet obedience. "The board finalized the overseas acquisition tonight," he said. "Your approval tipped the vote." Nathan nodded. "Good." "There's more," the man added. "Your name came up. Again." Nathan's expression did not change. "From where?" "From people who laughed tonight," the man said evenly. "They don't know it yet, but they are already orbiting you." Nathan closed his eyes briefly, not in satisfaction, not in anger, but in acceptance. This was the cost of what he had built: distance, silence, being misunderstood on purpose. "When do we move?" the man asked. Nathan opened his eyes. "We don't move," he said. "We wait." The man raised an eyebrow. "They need time to forget me," Nathan continued. "To decide I was never important. To speak freely. To make mistakes." A faint smile crossed the man's face. "And when they do?" Nathan stood, walking toward the window, looking out over the land that belonged to him, a kingdom he had never needed to announce. "Then," he said quietly, "I return." Behind him, unseen, the man nodded with something close to respect. Nathan did not look like a man planning revenge. He looked like a man reclaiming a timeline that had always been his. And somewhere across the city, in a house still glowing with empty celebration, Samantha slept believing she had won. Morning arrived without ceremony. Pale winter light slid across the floor of the main suite, catching the edge of the glass walls and spreading slowly, deliberately, like the world easing into a truth it was not ready to announce. Nathan was already awake. He stood barefoot near the window, coffee untouched on the table behind him. watching the estate come alive in silence. Staff moved along distant paths with quiet efficiency, never intruding, never staring. Everything functioned without needing his presence. And that was exactly how he had designed it. He dressed simply. Dark coat. No logos. No statements. He had learned long ago that power revealed itself best through absence. When the car arrived, he stepped into it without hesitation, giving no instructions beyond a single destination. Downtown. The building they stopped in front of looked ordinary to anyone passing by. A renovated industrial structure with clean glass and minimal signage. No name announced itself above the door. Inside, however, the atmosphere shifted immediately. People moved with purpose, voices low, eyes alert. Recognition rippled through the space as Nathan entered. Subtle and controlled, like a current beneath still water. A woman in her early 40s approached him, tablet already in hand. "Good morning, Mr. Hale. The partners are waiting." Nathan nodded. "Let them." The conference room overlooked the city. Steel and glass framed a skyline still softened by haze. Men and women sat around the table, some familiar, others new, all of them sharp. Conversations died the moment Nathan took his seat. Not out of fear, but out of focus. When he was present, noise became unnecessary. They discussed numbers first. Acquisitions that would quietly shift entire industries. Investments routed through entities that did not exist to the public. A failing company that would be rescued not for charity, but for leverage. Nathan spoke rarely, but when he did, the direction changed. Not dramatically, just enough to make everything align. "Approve it," he said at one point, tone calm. "But restructure leadership." Quietly. A man across the table hesitated. The current CEO is well connected. Nathan met his eyes, expression neutral. Then he'll land softly somewhere else. No one argued. By midday, the meeting ended. Nathan left as he had arrived, unnoticed by the street outside, but followed by something invisible and heavy. Influence. Across the city, Samantha's mourning was louder. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror. Phone pressed to her ear, laughter sharp and bright. "I know, right?" He just stood there. Didn't say a word. Walked out like he'd been waiting for it. She paused, listening, then smirked. Some men are just born small. Her reflection smiled back, satisfied. The house felt lighter without Nathan's quiet presence, without his restraint. She moved freely now, already rearranging her life, already telling the story in a way that made her the hero and him the footnote. At work, she carried that same confidence into the office. Heels clicking against polished floors. Colleagues glanced up as she passed, curious. News traveled fast, especially when humiliation was entertaining. During a late afternoon meeting, her manager entered with an unusual stiffness, eyes avoiding hers. He cleared his throat. "There's been a change." Samantha leaned back in her chair. "What kind of change?" "A restructuring," he said. "Effective immediately." Her smile faded slightly. And your department is being absorbed," he continued. "Your role is redundant." The room felt suddenly smaller. "That's not possible," she said. "I just closed a major account." He nodded, uncomfortable. The decision didn't come from here. From where, then? He hesitated, then shook his head. "We are not at liberty to say." Across town, Nathan sat in the back of the car, reviewing a report on his tablet. The name of Samantha's company appeared briefly on the screen. Highlighted, then minimized. He did not linger on it. He did not need to. By evening, whispers had begun. A contractor Samantha's father relied on suddenly backed out of a long-standing deal. A bank requested additional documentation for a loan that had been considered routine. An invitation to a charity gala was rescinded without explanation. Small things. Quiet things. The kind that unsettled without revealing their source. Samantha noticed the pattern before she understood it. Patterns had always fascinated Nathan. She had called it obsession once. Now, it felt like something else. That night, she scrolled through her phone. Irritation growing with every unanswered message, every delayed response. She typed Nathan's name into the search bar without thinking, then froze. An article had surfaced. Not about him. About a private investment firm involved in a massive international acquisition. No photos. No personal details. Just a name buried in the final paragraph. Nathan Hale. Strategic principal. Her stomach tightened. She told herself it was coincidence. There were other Nathan Hales. History was full of them. Still, she read it again. Across the city, Nathan stood once more by a window, watching lights flicker on one by one. The world was speaking now, softly, carefully, as if afraid of being overheard. He listened, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. They had started to remember him. The charity gala was held in a restored museum overlooking the river. All marble columns and glass ceilings, designed to make generosity look elegant and effortless. Valets lined the entrance, cameras flashed with disciplined restraint, and names that mattered moved through the doors as if they belonged to the building itself. Samantha stood at the foot of the steps, adjusting her dress, forcing calm into her breathing. She had almost not come. Almost. But disappearing felt like surrender, and she was not ready to accept that word. Inside, the room glowed. Chandeliers scattered light across polished floors, and music drifted softly, chosen to sound cultured without demanding attention. Samantha scanned faces as she moved through the crowd, smiling automatically, greeting people she had known for years. The smiles she received back were slower than before. Polite. Careful. Conversations ended. Just a little too soon. She felt it then. The shift. The subtle recalibration of space around her. At the bar, she overheard fragments of conversation. Words spoken just softly enough to be shared without being owned. Quiet investor. No public profile at all. Controls the board through intermediaries. She turned, heart tightening, trying to place the voice. When she did, her breath caught. Nathan stood across the room. Not announced. Not spotlighted. Simply present. He wore a tailored dark suit, understated, no excess. His posture relaxed in a way that spoke of certainty rather than confidence. People approached him not with excitement but with respect, leaning in, listening. He smiled occasionally, nodded, said very little. The room adjusted around him unconsciously, conversations bending toward his gravity. For a moment, Samantha forgot how to breathe. This was not the man who had poured wine for her parents, who had stayed quiet while they criticized him at their own table. This was not the man who had walked out into the snow carrying nothing but silence. This man belonged here. She watched as a prominent developer shook Nathan's hand, laughter following something he said quietly. A senator leaned close, brows furrowed in interest. A woman Samantha recognized from the board of a major foundation touched Nathan's arm lightly as she spoke, eyes intent. Samantha's chest tightened with something sharp and unfamiliar. Recognition. She moved before she could stop herself, heels carrying her through the crowd as if drawn by an invisible thread. Each step felt heavier than the last. By the time she reached him, the small group around Nathan had shifted away, leaving space without being asked. "Nathan," she said, forcing a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I didn't know you were coming." He turned slowly, as if he had sensed her long before she spoke. His expression was calm, polite, distant. "Neither did I," he replied evenly. The words landed harder than any insult. She laughed lightly, too lightly. "Well, this is unexpected. You look, well." "So do you," he said, without warmth, without edge. An awkward pause stretched between them. Around them, the room seemed to quiet, attention sharpening. "I heard about your firm," Samantha said, lowering her voice. "Congratulations. I had no idea you were involved in something so significant." Nathan studied her for a moment, not searching her face, not accusing, simply observing. "You never asked," he said. Her smile faltered. "That's not fair." He tilted his head slightly. "Fairness was never your concern." Before she could respond, a man approached, interrupting. "Mr. Hale, the board chair is asking for you." Nathan nodded once. "Excuse me." He turned away from Samantha without another word, leaving her standing alone amid the quiet hum of the gala. She watched him go, watched the room open for him, watched how easily he moved through it, untouchable. Later, As the evening progressed, Samantha found herself cornered by questions she could not answer. Why had her company's funding stalled? Why had her name been quietly removed from a committee she had helped form? Why did people suddenly speak to her as if she were temporary? Near the end of the night, she saw Nathan again, this time standing beneath the glass ceiling. City lights reflected above him like a constellation. She hesitated, then approached more cautiously. "Nathan," she said softly, "we should talk." He looked at her, expression unreadable. "We are." She swallowed. "I didn't know who you were becoming." Nathan's gaze did not soften. "I didn't become this," he said quietly. "I revealed it." Silence settled between them, thick and inescapable. "You humiliated me," Samantha said, voice trembling despite her effort. "You let them laugh." Nathan leaned slightly closer, just enough that she could hear him clearly. "You invited them to," he said. "I declined." She searched his face for anger, for bitterness, for something she could recognize. There was none. "Is this revenge?" she asked. Nathan straightened. "No," he replied calmly. "This is consequence." He turned and walked away, disappearing once more into the crowd that parted for him without question. Samantha stood beneath the chandeliers, the weight of the room pressing down on her, understanding finally settling in. She had not divorced a loser. She had dismissed a force. The fallout did not arrive all at once. It unfolded with precision, like a plan executed by people who understood that the most lasting damage was never loud. Days passed, then weeks. The world adjusted, quietly realigning itself around Nathan's presence, while Samantha's orbit shrank in ways she could neither predict nor stop. Nathan returned to the estate less often now. He moved between cities, between rooms where decisions were made before the public ever sensed a shift. Private flights, discreet entrances, conversations that never appeared on calendars. He was not everywhere, but he was felt everywhere, like pressure changing before a storm. In one such room, deep within a glass tower overlooking the ocean, a group of executives waited as Nathan entered. They rose without being prompted, not out of fear, but instinct. He took his seat at the head of the table, hands resting calmly on the polished surface. "The transition is complete," a woman said, sliding a folder toward him. "Assets are secured. Opposition has withdrawn." Nathan flipped through the pages, eyes scanning without haste. "Good," he said. "Then we move forward." Across the table, a man cleared his throat. "There's been some curiosity about your past." Nathan looked up. The room stilled. "Curiosity is harmless," he said evenly. "Speculation is optional." No one pressed further. Across the city, Samantha sat in a half-empty apartment, surrounded by boxes she had never finished unpacking. The silence there was different from the one Nathan carried. It pressed in on her, loud and restless. Her phone lay face up on the table, stubbornly dark. Friends had stopped checking in. Opportunities had dissolved into polite refusals. She replayed the gala in her mind. The way the room had bent toward Nathan. The way people had looked at her as though she were already a memory. Regret crept in not as sorrow, but as realization. She had mistaken quiet for weakness, patience for insignificance. One evening, desperation pushed her to dial his number. The call rang twice before going to voicemail. "Nathan," she said, voice unsteady, pride finally cracking. "I know I don't deserve your time, but I need to talk. Please." He listened to the message later, alone in the dark, city lights far below. He did not delete it. He did not respond. Some conversations lost their relevance the moment respect was removed. Weeks later, their paths crossed one final time. It happened in a courthouse, of all places, where Nathan was concluding the last formal tie to his former life. Samantha stood at the far end of the hallway. Thinner now, tension etched into her posture. She hesitated when she saw him, then approached slowly, as if afraid he might vanish. "I didn't know how strong you were," she said quietly. Nathan met her gaze, calm as ever. Strength wasn't the issue. She swallowed. "Then what was?" "Vision," he replied. "And loyalty." The clerk called his name. Nathan turned, then paused. "You wanted a loser," he said, not unkindly. You found one because you needed someone small enough to stand above. Her eyes filled, but it was too late for tears to matter. Nathan walked away without looking back, footsteps steady, unhurried. Outside, sunlight spilled across the steps, bright and unrestrained. He breathed it in, free of the weight he had carried for years. He did not feel victorious. He felt complete. In the months that followed, his name became Untouchable. Not famous, not flashy, simply protected by the understanding that crossing him was unnecessary and unwise. People spoke of him carefully, with respect earned not through fear, but through consistency. Nathan built quietly. He gave anonymously. He chose allies who valued substance over spectacle. The world never saw him smile at headlines, because he never needed them. He had been divorced. He had been humiliated. He had been forgotten. And when he returned, no one could erase him again. Subscribe for more cinematic revenge stories. Like if you believe power doesn't need to announce itself. Comment, would you have walked away or fought back?